Welcome to today's broadcast, how to use insights to turn social connections into sales. I'm David Guerra, the technology content strategist for HG Insights, and I love this topic today. It's a subject that's close to my heart because part of what I do in managing our webinar program is recruit other guests, and I primarily do this through social media, which is what we're going to talk about today. Take this webinar, for example. I learned about Vingresso through another company I work with, and I reached out to Mario Martinez on LinkedIn. And for those of you who don't know, Mario is the CEO of Vingresso. And in my message to him, I explained that I thought we could do this great webinar together, and I told him the reasons why. He then referred me to some of his team members, Bernie, Vivica, who's on the line now, and we discussed the possibility, put a plan together, and we made it happen. But my reason for sharing that story is that exchange in a nutshell is what we're going to talk about today. In other words, how do you use social connections and social media platforms to connect with others and turn those connections into sales? That's going to be the subject of our 1-hour event today. But before we get into that, I just want to say we want to make these things interactive. You have a chat window on the side of your screen. It's a chat panel. You can send your questions via that chat panel to us at any time, and we'll try to answer those questions during the course of the webinar or at the end. And anything that we don't get to, we'll follow up via email. So on today's episode, we have two great panelists. We have Vivica von Rosen, and she is the Chief Visibility Officer and co-founder of Vingresso, and Justin Kitagawa, the Senior Director of Product Marketing and Operations at HG Insights. So just you guys do a better job of introducing yourselves than I do. Vivica, can you just tell me a little bit about your role there at Vingresso?
Sure. So people are like, what's a chief visibility officer? Basically, we ran out of good chief names. And so I was like, it's alliterative with Vivica and Vingresso. But really, I'm one of the faces of Vingresso, one of 4 founders. I do a lot of speaking, and I'm also head of our personal branding division. So hence visibility. But it's pretty exciting because having been a solopreneur, entrepreneur for 12 years, teaching and training on LinkedIn, writing a couple books, having a couple programs, it's really cool to work with people like Mario Martinez, Bernie Borges, Kurt Shaver, who are the other co-founders, to create programs that really help people learn to sell with, we happen to like LinkedIn and video, but really selling with social, which is kind of the whole point of today's webinar. And also I have the extreme power of being able to elevate Justin to co-founder of HG Insights.
I saw that on your video. That was awesome.
Thank you for that, by the way. Being
co-founder
is always a opportunity for me. So
the perfect segue for Justin. Justin, you want to...
Yeah. So as David mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Operations and Product Marketing, and really what I kind of view my job as is helping prospects understand our products, but also working a lot with our customers and really understanding how we can best serve them, how we can provide insights that allow them to make better decisions and really empower their sales and marketing teams to be more efficient and more effective.
Perfect. Got it. All right. So we're going to start. Vivica, I'm going to start with you. At Vingresso, how do you define social selling? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, there are so many definitions, but what it comes down to is we just help sales professionals have more quality conversations, quality and qualified combinations with their connections on LinkedIn. So it's really about starting those conversations with new prospects and expanding existing relationships using a social platform. We like LinkedIn, but Twitter, Facebook, Insta, wherever your audience is, and pulling in the right type of content that can help to start generating those conversations.
And I'll just add, as someone who actually, not only, sells technology, but also buys a lot of technology from the operations side of my role, I can say that when salespeople engage with a buyer where we actually are gathering information, it's so much more convenient. And the other part of me is kind of thinking, like, if you're a salesperson and you're actually able to engage with someone on a social platform, again, they're early on in that information gathering process, and you can really help not only shape the conversation, but also kind of guide what the decision criteria are going to be really, really early on. And I think that's another like really, really powerful way that people are actually using social selling.
Absolutely. They're creating a false sense of familiarity, but who cares? It's a sense of familiarity. It's building that KLT, that know, like, and trust factor, right? And that's the power of social.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So you guys touched upon my first question a little bit. It's like, okay, so is this like a legit way to sell? All right, people are used to reaching out via email and calls and all that. I mean, can you really sell through social?
Yeah, and to Justin's point, people are on their socials, they're doing their research on their socials. That's the big change that's changed with buyers and making them modern buyers, is they're online researching first. And
Right.
if you don't, if you don't have a presence online, then good luck with that. And B, if you don't have the right kind of information that they're actually looking for, not what you want to, not
Right.
product-based stuff,
Yeah.
not what you want to share, but what they're actually searching for. That's what makes a modern buyer. And it's kind of interesting that 62% of modern buyers are actually researching their vendors online and on LinkedIn before ever reaching out. So if you're non-existent or you look bad, it's not helping your cause. And we have to do what the buyer is expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this before. I don't remember who said it, but it's like buyers want to be able to buy things. They don't necessarily want to be sold to. So like they're going to go out and they're going to look at and see what have other people's experiences been. And again, I think that's where the social selling kind of movement, or mindset really has, again, so much validity there. And the question as to whether or not this is a legitimate way to build pipeline, I think really the results speak for themselves there. And I would definitely encourage anybody to very much consider it. And again, I mean, just the results here of like, hey, if you want 61% higher win rates, I don't know any sales team that's going to say like, I think I'll actually the old way of doing this. I mean, that's an awesome, justification to be able to say, hey, let's actually try something new, and let's really, really commit to this. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it says there, 90% of buyers can't reach or 90% of sellers can't reach the buyers through phone or email anymore. I mean, think about like the last time an unknown number came through on your phone, or how many emails do you swipe left on, right? We don't answer our phones if we don't recognize the people. We don't read the email if it's not immediately, of interest to us. And so that's where this omni-channel approach, be it texting, digital video, AI that gives us information that we need, social networks, or getting referrals, digital referrals, all of those different channels. If you play in 3 or 4 of them, well, it's the 400% rule, right? If you play in 2 of them, you have maybe 100% success rate, but you add just 2 more channels where you might be able to reach out, and it jumps up exponentially to a 400% success rate. So got to be where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, and I don't know if you're like me, but I get like in the morning, first thing I see like all these emails that I don't recognize, and I just like multi-select them all and they're deleted, right?
Yeah.
But I never really do that on LinkedIn or on the social platform because that isn't as saturated for me. So I'm more likely to like look in that location.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think another piece of this too is that when you're really looking at, going and starting a social selling thing, is like you need to recognize that like it's not just a change in channel. Like you can't act the same way. You can't just be like I mean, how many of us have gotten LinkedIn emails that are the exact same copy of an email that they would have sent, and they're just using it as a different. And to me, that's missing the point of LinkedIn, missing the opportunity there. It really is kind of a shift in ideas and a shift in kind of, like you said, the mindset there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because, obviously I'm a big LinkedIn person, and I keep finding I should go into IG more, but I rarely go into Instagram unless I'm with my friend Sue, who's like the Instagram expert. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on Instagram. But every time I go into Instagram or even Facebook and go into messages, it's like there's all of these messages there that I've missed out on because it's not where I live. And so you've got to know, you've got to have the right insights. You've got to know your buyer and where they are, and just not promote your stuff where you're comfortable doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So for our next, okay. So let's say I'm convinced. How do I start this process, right? All three of us, I think we have like pretty good experience using the tools and all that, but like someone who just wants to do this and wants to not only do it for themselves, but for their whole organization,
Yeah.
where should they start?
Well, it's kind of interesting because a lot of people who teach and train on social selling, they start with the branding. But especially if you've got a team that you've got to get involved, you've got to get them into the right mindset. You know, maybe they're like super comfortable with the idea of social selling. They're already on all the socials. They're all, appropriately or inappropriately, but they're comfortable with it. But sometimes you get an older sales team and they're not comfortable with it. And if they're on, if they're on Instagram, it's a miracle. If they're on Facebook, it's to see their grandkids' pictures. And if they're on LinkedIn, it's because someone forced them into it 7 years ago. So you've got to get them understanding, like we just did, like, look, here are the facts. You will be more successful. So you got to adjust the mindset and then move into the branding, because a lot of people also go, okay, great, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm just going to immediately go out and start connecting with people and asking them to buy my stuff, which is the wrong thing to do. And then people come back to the profile and it's like from your 2 jobs ago, right? Or there's nothing there at all, or it says you're a quota crushing sales guy, which is a total turnoff. And so, we then have to go to the brand part and make sure that you're representing yourself in the best possible light. But not only that, and I'm speaking mainly about LinkedIn, but you want to make sure that your brand is focused on the buyer, not yourself. Like, how many people, raise your hand, have uploaded back when they had the feature of uploading your resume to LinkedIn? And it's a resume. Are you looking for a job, or are you trying to start conversations with
Yeah.
buyers? So that's another step. And then the next thing that people do wrong, like I said, is just go right for the kill, right? Hey, complete stranger, you don't know me, but we should totally connect on LinkedIn so I can sell you stuff. Don't do that, right?
Yeah.
You want to do like you would in a real life event, where you would go to a networking event, you'd walk into the room, you'd see who you knew and maybe ask to get introduced to somebody. Or if you don't know anyone, you kind of listen in on conversations, slide in when it's appropriate. Then when the people have a sense of who you are, you've had this conversation, then you can invite them to connect. And then after that, it's just feeding people with content so you stay top of mind and doing it in a regular way. So for us, that's what we feel works most effectively when rolling out a social selling program, is making sure you're doing those steps in that right order.
Yeah, and I mean, so we work a lot with, sales and marketing teams, and
Yeah.
whenever they're considering a new initiative or really just kind of changing anything, one of the things that we really challenge them to do is to first fully commit to something. Like if you're going to be testing something, you can't go into it kind of willy-nilly and say, well, I'm going to send out a couple in-mails, and if I don't get a response, then social selling doesn't work for me, or doesn't work for my industry, or any of the other excuses that you might hear from a sales team. You really have to commit to like actually doing this and changing your mindset. Another thing that we actually ask a lot of our clients to do is really to kind of take a look at their ICP. You'd be surprised how many people we talk to, and the ICP is something that's like weirdly passed down from like generation to generation, and it's not really reviewed. And everybody probably has like a different definition of what that is. And more importantly, the marketing team and the sales team might have completely different definitions of what that is. So yeah, well, one of the first things we do is we'll sit down with them and say, okay, well what do you think your ideal customer profile is? What does your ideal customer look like? And really challenge them on that, because if you get that wrong, it doesn't matter if you're doing social selling, it doesn't matter if you're doing ABM, it doesn't matter what initiative you're going into. If you're pointing that initiative at the wrong people, not going to be successful.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that disconnect between marketing and sales, right? You got your sales team creating this awesome content, and the sales team is like going, that's great, but we're
Yeah,
not working with those people. We're working with these people. Can you
yeah.
please give us some marketing and sales qualified leads? That's, I'm
Right.
glad you brought that up, Justin.
Well, it's something that's really exciting for us because I mean, it's not something I think when we started off, we weren't thinking like, hey, we're going to help, sales and marketing teams come together. We kind of
Right.
have like that kumbaya session. And again, we never sought out to do that, but what we're hearing from our customers is, hey, like being able to kind of consolidate around like a single vision of who our ICP is or who our
Yeah.
total addressable market is actually having those effects. And I'm one, I'll admit, I never would have thought that like, oh yeah, if we just provide really good tech intelligence data,
Yeah.
we can actually help improve the relationship between sales and marketing. But
Right.
that's what we're seeing, and that's what our customers are telling us. They're telling us that like, hey, our relationship with marketing has never been better. We even had one, a customer of ours speak at Dreamforce, and he's in
Nice.
marketing operations, and his whole thing was like, I actually have salespeople that like me now. This has never. And again, he kind of was playing around with it, poking fun at the sales team, but like it's true. Like if you have alignment there, everything becomes easier. And like you said, you kind of get like a two-way street there where it's like, hey, sales might be generating awesome content. And they're closer to the customer, they're closer to the
Yep.
buyer.
Yep.
Again, just awesome to have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Justin, you were breaking up a little bit there for us. So I am going to, um, let's see. Vivek, are you still
Yep.
there?
I'm still here, and I hear
Okay.
Justin just fine.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not saying
Good.
it's you, David, but it's you. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
It's not me, it's you.
All right. It's me. It's me. No, when Justin was talking about the ICP, I started thinking of like the dating sites, right? And
Right.
ICP being like, okay, who are the type of people that you want to have conversations with?
Yeah.
If you get those parameters wrong, right, you're going to talk to people that you never wanted to talk to in your life. And
It's
it's kind of that same way as a business. Your ICP is kind of like that ideal match, whatever that
yeah.
is for your company.
Because if they're not qualified to buy from you, if they're not qualified to date you in the business world,
Right.
right?
Right.
But it's true. Like how many times do we put out great content? I know it happens to me still, put out content and I'll get people coming back and saying, hey, we, would love to hire you for $150. And it's like, yeah, no.
That's a, I
20x
am sure.
that and we're good.
I'm sure we'll get into this later, but that's actually one of the main reasons clients come to us for our IT spend intelligence. Is it's like, hey, like, yes, this person might, they're really, really interested in our
Yeah.
solution and they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, like I'm accidentally prioritizing people who are really interested, but their budgets are low. And I'd rather kind of balance
Exactly.
the interest level with the revenue potential there. And I think
Yeah.
most salespeople would agree that prioritizing revenue potential is definitely a key thing for them.
It is, and I mean, I'm excited to hear more about HG Insights because, like, you can't go on LinkedIn, unfortunately, unless you're paying for ads, and say, sort on search by like how much money the individual is making, So unless you're doing ads or searching by companies, but yeah, for individuals, like you don't know, and so are you creating the right content and are you engaging with the right people?
Well, and that's right. I mean, you might actually, if somebody does have a lower budget or lower spend amount in your particular area of IT, you might change up your messaging. You might change
Right.
which product you pitch to them. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that they're not going to be a customer, but you
Right.
might not pitch like your top tier product. You
Yeah.
might go for a more entry level
Something
product
fancier.
and avoid that kind of mismatch there.
Well,
Right.
and not only that, it's the opposite because I came from an entrepreneur, solopreneur marketing role, right? In my own business and where it was time for money and it was like $200-300 an hour, right? And then I moved into and so I attracted those types of people and those are the conversations I had. Then we moved into Vengresso where it's, we're working with sales teams and it's six figures or high five figures anyway. And I caught myself sometimes lowballing because I was unclear as to the level that my client was coming in at. So whether you're lowballing or highballing, you just want to make sure that you're on the right level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, hey, Justin, we had this, I think you're going to cover this a little bit later, but we have a question coming in here from Peter. What if only a small percentage of your LinkedIn connection base are ideal customers? Organizing and targeting customers is difficult. Maybe we'll cover that when you get to that section, but if you have any initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and Viveka, I mean, you can jump in here too, but like, I don't think you necessarily have to only talk about your existing connections. Like, you can go out and
Yes.
target companies, and Viveka will probably talk a little bit about like how to go about doing that.
Yeah.
But again, an important step there, and we are going to cover this, is how do you actually target those companies in the first place? Like, how do you pick who you're going to go after? Not only who is in the company, but also who is in the individual. So you're making sure you're reaching out to the right person at the right companies that has the right level of spend, again, so that you can prioritize the accounts that are going to make you and your company, the most amount of money.
Yep.
Yeah, and to build on that, at least you've got some connections that are the right connections. And the cool thing about LinkedIn is on even with the free account, actually only with the free account, there's a search filter that's called connections of. So pull one of those good prospects or good connections in, the right ones, type them into connections of, put in whatever other filters you want, industry, location, title, etc. And LinkedIn will serve to you people that you have in common with your connection, and then you can ask them for invitations or an introduction. You can just reach out to them and say, hey, we both, know Justin, and I noticed that you do this, and we've got a great white paper on it. Whatever it is, you always want to lead with value, but you actually can use LinkedIn tools to expand your network as long as you've got the tiniest seed of of a good connection, right? So good place to start.
And you guys covered this, some of it, but we can get into it a little bit more. What are the social media platforms that people should be using? Viveka, you talked a little bit about that, right? Just being where the people are, right?
It is. And if you're in B2B, it's LinkedIn. I mean, if you're B2C, IG might be great. If you're a lifestyle fashionista, obviously LinkedIn, maybe not so much. But you need to be where your audience is. And IG is interesting because we've got more and more B2B companies coming in. And I know at Vengresso, we're starting to do more with IG. So it's not just LinkedIn, but you just want to be where they are, whether you're comfortable with that platform or not. You got to kind of get comfortable with it.
Yeah, and we certainly hear the same thing from our customers. So, I think a lot of this actually is driven from the marketing side, at least, due to kind of recent privacy regulations. So things like GDPR and CCPA are, a lot of marketers are coming to us, salespeople are coming to us going like, I don't know how I'm supposed to get around these things and still be compliant. And
right.
in a lot of cases, LinkedIn is kind of the answer there, where it's like, well, here's where all of the B2B contacts are, and here's a platform that you can engage with them in a compliant way. To be honest, it's one of the reasons why we developed our HG for LinkedIn tool, is to be able to hey, if you guys are going to be, running, in this case, targeted advertisements on LinkedIn, why don't we help you do that so you can really focus on the accounts that are going to be the ones that have, again, not only the highest propensity to buy, but also the right budgets for you to go after.
And can I just say how glad I am that you guys do that? Because I actually created a LinkedIn course on ads for lynda.com/LinkedIn Learning. And I was so frustrated by it. Like, I'm one of the experts, or at least I was back then. And I was frustrated by it. Now, never mind, LinkedIn is way easier to deal with than Facebook, but still, they don't give the best metrics. So even if you're doing split testing and running micro campaigns, you're not always getting the information that you need. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys have that product.
Yeah, and we just launched this. I mean, I think we're one of the first companies to really take advantage of their new matched audiences API. And
yeah,
I mean, the results we're seeing from our customers are actually pretty astounding. Like, one of the first customers that we got back came back and said like, hey, so my engagement rate, my click-through rate on my LinkedIn ads went up 10x. And we were like, whoa, like that's an awesome result. And again, it's because you're able to get so hyper targeted there that you're not, essentially wasting your advertising money, showing ads to people who either don't want your solution, it's not relevant, or they can't afford it.
Right.
Well, and you said earlier, you've got to get you have to have a committed mindset. And I know when people do LinkedIn ads, it's like, well, I have a $50, coupon, so I'll just run $50 worth of ads. Well, and they're also getting on there expecting to sell a $200,000 service through one text ad. Like,
Yeah.
Right. You get that $50 coupon every so often too, huh, Viveka?
yeah.
Here's your $50. Here's your $50 spend on LinkedIn.
Change that for cash, please.
Right. All right. So this is something near and dear to both your hearts. But Justin, what criteria should people be using to find quality prospect companies when they're going out to find their, in this case, LinkedIn targets?
Yeah, and again, I think that there's no one size fits all answer to this. I think you kind of have to look at your market, and again, it really is dependent on you first, kind of taking a look at your ICP and really questioning, asking some questions of like, is this actually our ICP? Are there other pieces of intelligence that are available that we can use to augment this or make this a little bit smarter and more targeted? But certainly the list here is great. I mean, starting off with firmographics, I think that's kind of something everybody's pretty comfortable with. You often hear like, oh, our target market is software companies that are, have over $100 million in revenue. Right. Being able to layer in these other pieces to kind of whittle it down to keep going to like, hey, what we're doing here is we're pre-qualifying people and qualifying companies out. And I know that sounds scary to every salesperson. I'm like, I don't want to qualify people out before I've talked to them. But if it means that you're able to focus your efforts and focus your conversations on the people who are, again, going to make you the most amount of money, I think when you look at it that way, that helps a little bit. Certainly things like news, that's actually a great driver to reach out. It's actually something a lot of our customers do. A lot of people come to us is like, hey, one of my competitors just announced that their product's going end of life. I want to be able to talk to those people, target those people right now because I have a very, very timely message that I want to send to them. And again, that works really well.
Yeah, that's great. And the thing is, with Sales Navigator, you can't do a whole lot with free LinkedIn search, but with Sales Navigator, you can layer on some of those different filters and hopefully attain the right ABM list. However, having said that, it's user generated content. So, are they really $100 million company, or does the CEO of this 6-person firm really wish they were $100,000 or $100 million company, right? So that's one of the downfalls of Sales Navigator. We're using other tools to truly confirm some of those companies, right? Especially the mid-market ones. Like, we all know Apple is a big company with lots and lots of money, right? But it's those mid-market ones that you maybe never heard of, or the more niche verticals that you're just not sure how big is that accounting firm, how big is that software company,
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. And Dave, if you want to go to the next slide, actually, we talked about this a little bit, but when we're talking about targeting, we're talking about using different pieces of intelligence. There's getting the intelligence, there's getting the right intelligence, and then there's getting accurate intelligence.
Yes.
As someone who's been in the data space for a while now, there's lots of data out there that is not accurate. And one of the reasons people come to us oftentimes is they've been burned by that. They've been burned by running a campaign that was kind of based on flawed intelligence to begin with. And HG's kind of obsession with data quality and accuracy really is a huge benefit to our customers. So starting with the first thing here, just actually going and cleansing our firmographics. Like, we go through, we spend tons of money, tons of analyst time going through and reviewing things like the industries, the revenues, the company hierarchies, and correcting all these things to make sure that when you run a campaign, when you are building a territory for your sales team, you're actually building it on solid intelligence. Again, if the intelligence is flawed, everything after that's going to be flawed as well. Again, kind of going back into what we can actually help you do, we have, what is categorically the largest and most granular IT spend intelligence. So we can actually tell you exactly, or not exactly, but we can tell you how much a company is spending on, really, really granular areas of IT. And when you combine that with IT installs and being able to tell you not only how much they're spending, but what specific products they're using. And again, we track over 10,000 different technology products, 120 million installs. You can see how granular we're able to get to this. And then kind of even the one step further than that is our contract intelligence, where we're tracking, tens of thousands of contracts where we can say, hey, this company is spending this much, they're using these technologies, and they have a contract that's coming up for renewal, next April. That's intelligence
huge.
that I think, yeah, most sales and marketing people are kind of like, wait, if I knew all that information, if I lose this deal, that's kind of on me at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that. Sales Navigator doesn't do that. I mean, it really is cool because again, with user generated content, you just don't know how clean it is. So the fact that your information that you're finding is cleansed is a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And then here's just another example. So if you go to the next slide, we have kind of this is actually a real life customer example, though we've stripped the customer name out of. But they were able to go from saying, hey, I want to target software development companies in the United States with over 100 million revenue. Yeah. And we were able to get them from that all the way to that are using a competitor with a complementary solution, that have an upcoming renewal or a cloud first strategy, and are spending at least $50 million on cloud storage.
Wow.
So again, we're able to get really, really granular into hey, here are the actual people you want to talk to. When we ask them well, when you take a look at lists of software development firms in the US making over 100 million, how many of those are actual valid prospects? They're kind of well, not that many actually. Or some of these aren't really that great. And again, here, with the spend piece, not only can you use it as a filtering criteria, but you can also use it for prioritization. If you're a sales manager, do you want your sales team focused on the accounts that can just barely afford your product, or do you want them to focus on the accounts that have huge budgets where you're actually able to go present them value, of course, but then hopefully bring value back into your own organization as well.
Exactly. What he said.
Nice segue. Okay, so now we talked about finding the right companies, and I think that's a good place to start, right? You want to start with the right companies, but then once you do find the right companies, how do you find the right people to connect with?
And I think that's where LinkedIn is very strong, provided people, if they've moved on, have changed their LinkedIn profiles. But the really cool thing, and especially with Sales Navigator, is whether you're coming in from the company or you're looking for specific roles and getting your results that way, you can get pretty up to date information, especially if that prospect's active on LinkedIn. They're not going to be sharing content on LinkedIn if their profile is out to date. So it's a really powerful tool. And to go back several slides ago, it opens up an opportunity for conversation. So once you find the right person and they're active on LinkedIn, and with Sales Navigator you can actually sort your results by people who've been active on LinkedIn in the past 30 days, you have a really awesome opportunity then to start the conversation. And LinkedIn is continuing to add new filters into Sales Navigator, mainly, like software they might be using, like keywords they might be using, things like that. So it's not the be all and end all, but it does open up a platform, or it is a platform that opens up an opportunity to start having those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually just wondering, I wonder if I searched on LinkedIn for Chief Visibility Officer, how many results?
There's one at Coca-Cola and me. No, okay. I know. It's a good question. I've never actually checked. I'm going to check that now.
You target both of them. Yeah, I mean, again, making sure that you have the right people is obviously hugely important. Vivek is really the expert here. But again, it has to do with kind of just knowing who your target market is, understanding the role, and of course, understanding kind of what challenges that person has, and being able to kind of shape your pitch to who that person is. I think we've all seen salespeople who say, "Here are the personas I'm going after, sales and marketing," and then they give the exact same message to both.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you really need to get a lot more granular in this, because again, in a social environment, I think there's kind of the expectation that you're going to do your homework, that you're going to present value to them, and you're not just, again, using your social network as a marketing automation platform.
Right.
It really should be, you
Yes.
actually, trying to present value with what you're doing here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because there's so many automation tools out there that, will allow you to connect with 180 people a day and send them a canned message. And guess what? It's not very effective. It probably get your LinkedIn profile shut down, So it's really interesting, again, how people think it works, and if they're using search tools that are wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So our next subject is, okay, so
And
before
we've
you,
lost the slides, I
Yeah, the
think.
slides went away.
Yeah.
okay, let's see, view. All right, I will get them back somehow. All right, here we go. Play from current. Here we go. All right, so you've done all this work in kind of identifying, who the accounts are, who the people are that you want to engage with, but what should you be doing before you even contact a decision maker? I remember, Viveka, you saying something about how all of a sudden you'll go to somebody's LinkedIn profile and
Yeah.
you'll see that basically they have like their last job there, like, 2 or 3 years ago, and they haven't done anything with LinkedIn since. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And that, and that's the problem, is not every awesome prospect is active on LinkedIn. So first of all, find the ones that are, and begin engaging with more and more people. But yeah, that's where the omni-channel approach starts working. So you can go into different social sites where they might be. You can Google them, jump online. So if they're not active on LinkedIn, you're going to have to find them in other arenas. You might have to go to the golf course, you might have to go to the country club, but that's expensive, and hopefully you can find and start engaging with them ahead of time. And we at Vengresso, we do what we call socially surrounding our prospects, which is when you're able to find them on LinkedIn and they're active, you start having all of your colleagues kind of pile in on the conversation, and not just like, yay, awesome post, but actually puts a thoughtful question, or pull a quote from the post and start responding on it. And what's really cool is, if you do that, it's really non-intrusive. But what happens is the prospects start seeing all of this activity from your company, and then of course your salesperson or the CEO, you could do peer-to-peer too, right? Reaches out to them, and we landed a pretty big deal doing exactly that. We had a prospect in a big, I can't say, a big software company. Sounds like, yeah. And we've been trying to get in touch with this person, and she'd ignored all of our, invitations to connect, and all of our emails, and a few phone calls. But then Mario and then the rest of us started socially surrounding her post, because she was active on LinkedIn, and Mario got the phone call. So it's really effective to do that social surround. The other nice thing is, of course, content that you share is highly shareable. So we've also had where, we've sent a one mob video, which is a video message. But the nice thing about one mob is you can do a landing page, and then you can set it up so you can trace who's opening it and who's sharing it. And we saw one video that Kurt did, go to our point of contact, our POC, throughout the whole buying committee, until we got an appointment and actually closed the deal with them. So but that came from content that we had socially shared. So it allows for more opportunity to engage.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and making sure that you do, your homework. So again, you're reaching out and you can actually
Yeah.
kind of pitch your value to them. And again,
Yeah.
the value, not the value that that you can provide, but the value you can bring them. And that's a real
Right.
weird distinction, but like not just saying like, hey, we help sales and marketing companies. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I can help you do this. And
Yeah.
you know, when we talk to sales and marketing companies, we often, you know, they often tell us that they're facing these challenges. You know, what are your challenges? How can I help? Just being able to provide that. And again, you can't do that without having some level of intelligence about the company or about that role, about what they're facing. You know, one of the kind of unique things about, especially the technology install intelligence is really every product that a company is using tells a story about that,
Yes.
that company. So not only do we see a lot of customers who are saying, hey, I want to go after companies that are using Salesforce, or I want to target HubSpot customers. They're really saying like, I want to take a look at a company's tech stack more holistically and kind of learn what that says about that company. You know, hey, are they a cloud first company? Are they more of an early adopter? You know, one of the ones for us is, you know, we actually do really well with companies that have ABM strategies in place. So we look oftentimes for companies that have ABM specific or ABM centric tools around there. And you know, not only do we know, hey, that person or that company is likely a better prospect for us, but we also know like a project that they're doing. Like we know that they're running ABM. So when we reach out to them, we can say, hey, you know, we can actually help you pick better ABM targets so that your ABM programs can be more successful. And again, I think that you know, that kind of level of strategic intent of being able to see like what initiatives they have in place is hugely beneficial when you're doing this.
Yeah. Otherwise it's spray and pray, you know, it's like, which a lot of the automation does. It's just like, put it out there. They kind of match our buyer persona. Let's just spray it out there and pray that someone actually, you know, answers the phone, opens the email, responds to the message. And it's such a colossal waste of time. And it can create negative sentiment and cost you business if you would just take the time to get the right insights and reach out in the right way, you know.
Well, especially when you're looking at someone, our company's LinkedIn profile or people's LinkedIn profiles, the stuff they post, they're posting about their lives. They're posting about the things that they're working on. So oftentimes you can kind of turn, I mean, that's a gold mine of insight to be able to say like, hey, like, you know, Justin's asking about ABM tools, or Justin's asking about whatever solutions out there, asking other people, hey, he might be looking for that, or, you know, he's having this particular issue, or, you know, like how to, I mean, the big one for us, like how do you scale a company that's growing as quickly as ours? Like I'm looking for other people, you know, for answers. I'm like, hey, like this is, you know, it's hard to grow a company this fast. You know, and then if someone were to come to me and say like, hey, like, you know, we specialize in helping companies scale their growth. Like that's an awesome message to take to someone who's in a growing startup who's like looking around at, you know, operationally saying like, how are we going to, you know, hire 20 more salespeople next month? So yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, speaking of scale, but on a different, in a different manner. So I've got a question from Peter, and basically he's asking something that a lot of people have thought of is, so how do I turn this social, you know, contacting people? We mentioned you don't want to turn it into like a Marketo, like a you know, marketing automation thing where you just blast out. But he's just wondering, it's like, how can I scale that so that it's not just a, you know, Vivica, Justin, David, one at a time, reaching out to each person on LinkedIn? Are there tools or anything that people can use out there that allows them to do not necessarily, you know, the mass campaign, but personalize it a little bit, but just send it out to more people than just one at a time?
You know, for me, I just, first of all, LinkedIn hates automation. So if it thinks you're doing anything automated, it's gonna restrict your account, potentially close your account. And that's really, it's frustrating to me that there's a lot of companies out there doing lead generation for you, and they're not taking insights into account, and so people realize it's an automated message. You know, you can always create content that goes out like an update, like a native video that is focused on a particular buying group, So like, hey, sales lead. Well, in fact, if you know, we looked at the one that I sent for this one, hey, sales leaders, and we actually
Right.
had someone say, well, I'm not a sales leader, but can I still attend? Absolutely, you can still attend. But it was very focused on sales leaders. So that was one to many. You know, I think 28,000 or 2,800 people saw the video. But when it comes to one-on-one communication on LinkedIn, to me, it's worth it. It's worth the time at least to create some content for a particular buyer persona, ICP, and then customize it. It takes a little bit more time, but customize it by, you know, addressing them by name, maybe pulling in some information about the company, sharing the information either through a one mob video or just through a message, or you can do voicemail even on LinkedIn, but you can't automate voicemail, which is kind of nice. But you know, but the fact is, let's say you have 50 perfect prospects. You create your script and you do a voicemail to those 50 people. 30 of them are going to listen to it, but not if it's, but if you did a automated message out to 500 people, maybe 8 people will look at it, you know. So it's quality versus quantity. And yes, there are actually some pretty good automation tools out there, but I'm not going to talk about them because it goes against LinkedIn's end user agreement. It goes against our personal motto of PVC: personalize, add value, and put in a call to action.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think, oh, so I was going to say, you know, to Viveka's earlier point, I think this is part of that mindset shift
Yeah.
of, hey, you know, whenever we have companies come to us and saying like, hey, what we want is this amount of volume of outbound activity. What we typically say is, well, what are you really trying to get here? Like, you know, try to ask them, well, why are you trying to get to that volume? And they'll say, well, we're basing this off a response rate of 8%. It's like, well, if you were to better target, your response rate might go up to 25, even 40%.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, like, well, what are you really trying to do? Are you trying to send a certain number of outbound activities, or are you trying to hit your quota by hitting, you know, the right people with the right message? So I think it is, you know, just as it was, I think, difficult for a lot of marketers to kind of let go and say like, no, I need to send this, you know, this message needs to go to at least 50,000 people in order for me to hit my target. And it's like, well, what if you just send it to 25,000 of the right people? Yeah.
Right.
But can I just say, huge pet peeve here, and I'm not in the sales department anymore, but like, we have had salespeople who are no longer with us, and it's we'll have a sales qualified lead, like someone who is, you know, the perfect person. He's clicked through and downloaded our ebook, and we've been able to trace, and he's been on our website 16 times, and he's the, you know, the insights are right, and he's in the right type of company, and then we'll ask the salesperson, well, you know, have you talked to him? Well, I sent him an email. Like,
Yeah.
there are times when you need to go old school and actually pick up the darn phone, you know. So
Exactly.
anyway, pet peeve. I'll step off the
No,
soapbox now.
I think what I like about what you just said, Vivica and Justin, is I think that there's a way to do the scale thing, but you don't do it the typical marketing automation way, right? To do the scale thing, you do something like what you talked about. Hey, sales, you know, hey, hashtag sales leaders. And you just hope that what you put out there into the LinkedIn community just it gets picked up, right? I mean, it takes time. You got to build up your credibility, right? You put good stuff out there, and that's how you get sort of the wider net. But you can't, you know, all of a sudden send, you know, 10,000 LinkedIn messages that are all
Right.
basically the same, except, you know, the person's first name has changed, right?
Right. Exactly. And then there's an error in the automation process, and it says "dear first name." You
Right, right,
know,
exactly.
no. Yeah, and the thing we haven't even talked about are, because they're less qualified, which is why you need to know your insights, and you need to know how to create the right content for the right type of buyer. But that inbound information, and one of the things you can see on the screenshot are, you know, good prospects who are engaging on our content. Like, you can go engage on other people's content for sure. That's more proactive and outbound. But the inbound, like, don't ignore your notifications. If you're sharing content regularly on LinkedIn, and here it is, 82% of buyers are consuming 5 to 8 pieces of content before they choose to buy. So make sure you're the one, your company's the one putting out that content, not your competitors. But take a look at the people who are liking, commenting, and sharing your stuff. And there's often, you know, a good prospect there, or at least they're a good point person and would be able to introduce you to the buyer or the buying committee in their company. So too many people ignore, their notifications and their inboxes on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of money being wasted because they're not paying attention to those buying signals.
Yeah, I think, to that point of kind of like just wasting activity or wasting effort or wasting money, one of the kind of most powerful things that one of our customers actually showed me was they had calculated the cost of a bad lead, a cost of like,
Right.
hey, a lot of people think of like, oh, the cost is just, whatever, it's $50
Time.
a lead, and if that's not bad, I lose $50. And it's like, well, no, if you actually calculate the opportunity cost of how much time did a sales rep
Yes.
invest into doing all this, activity, trying to court this person, only to find out later that like, oh, they're not actually qualified at all. I've been spending all this time. And that number, I think, is a lot bigger than a lot of people realize.
Yes.
And I think once you figure that out, then like the idea of quality over quantity just becomes a null point. I'm just like, hey,
Yeah.
if we're doing this in the kind of the spray and pray way, that's not only is it not effective, it's costing us a substantial amount of money.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, here's a very small example. When I first started on LinkedIn, I was what was known as a LinkedIn open networker. I accepted everyone into my network, and now it's completely unmanageable. So I have to pay my assistant up to $200 to $300 a month to delete people so I can accept new people in. That is hard concrete because the wrong leads. I accepted the wrong connections, and also it has an effect on your visibility on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn algorithm, they're not looking at how many connections you have anymore. They're looking at how much activity are you getting on a post in reference to the size of your network. So, if you've got 30,000 people and 10 people are commenting, it's not going to do as well as someone who's got 300 people and 2 people commenting,
Right. So this was
Quality.
good. So I like what we talked about, surrounding the decision maker, right? Socially surrounding and providing value out there and being thoughtful with your posts and the content that you put out there. So it seems to me like that is kind of the prelude to this, to this next question. How should I reach out to a decision maker? Once I've done like all those other things, now it's like, okay, now I actually want to connect with you. How do I do that, Viveka? What are your recommendations?
So again, with the PVC, right? You never want to do, hey, you. So,
Right.
but shockingly, a lot of people do, whether they're sending out, an invitation to connect for the first time or a follow-up message on LinkedIn, I can't believe how many people either just don't customize or personalize the name, or dear sir, like, I'm sorry. Like, did you? Come on. Ouch. So that Vivek is a popular Indian name, so maybe they think I'm an Indian dude. But so personalize it, get the name right, do your research, show that you've done your research. Don't do blanket comments. Lead with value. So that's, personalize, add value. Always lead with value, never sales pitch. Oh, it just drives me nuts. Like everyone who they're starting to get better about customizing the invitation to connect. The second I accept, it's buy my stuff. Like, if you know
Right.
who I am, to your point, Justin, the company's growing exponentially. If someone would send me information, a checklist, a white paper, a blog article about what to do when your company is growing exponentially, I'm going to click through and read that, add value, but not like, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time? You don't know me yet, but I'm going to try and sell you on my consulting privileges for, setting your company up for acquisition. Like, I don't know you yet, right? So that drives me nuts. To what we've been saying earlier, don't automate. And also, be very, very careful about what you outsource. I do have an assistant who deletes people for me, but she deleted my husband. So she literally deleted my husband from my connections. So maybe I shouldn't have her doing even that. Like, you really should take the time to do the engagement by yourself. And then finally, I kind of alluded to this at the very beginning, but getting referrals, getting those digital referrals, or or real, not real, but getting a physical referral through a phone call, it's golden, right? 84% of buyers begin their buyer journey through a referral, and we've got our client here, Mike Moore. He had 100% success rate with our two-step referral process. So it's that's the way to go.
Yeah.
If you have just one good quality lead on LinkedIn, it's the seed that sprouts into many good quality connections. So
No, that's good. So we've got 5 minutes left. I want to make
okay,
sure that you're able to get to all your things. So our next, I think this is dear and near to a lot of people's hearts.
yeah.
It's like, how do I measure success? So I'm going to do, I decide I'm going to do this social selling. How should I measure that success?
Well, and I'm going to let you talk about this mostly, Justin, but if you don't know it yet, get your SSI score. If you just go to yourssiscore.com, you can see, even if you don't have Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, you can kind of see what your score is and just keep an eye on that and keep trying to improve it by better branding, more engagement with quality people, et cetera, et cetera. But that's one way of measuring it.
Yeah, and I think, again, there's kind of two ways to look at this. There's how do you measure the success of you being able to grow your network, network with the right people. Then there's kind of the hard brass tacks part of it of like, well, what's your win rate like? Is your win rate improving over time? Another one that's a lot of customers come to us and they're really focused on is deal cycles. How long are your sales reps spending on this? And again, another one I would look at is what is the cost of a bad lead? Are you able to kind of help reduce that by spending time? Ideally, a sales rep in the beginning of a sales cycle should be doing everything that they can to qualify that person out. Like you want to, everybody's heard, the development term fail fast. Sales cycles should fail fast as well, because every moment that a sales rep is trying to, and they'll brag about like, oh, I'm like, a pimple on a deal I never let go. I'm like, really? Because what you're doing there is like you're holding on to something that's a bad hand, and like you're just hoping that it works out at the end.
It's like a bad date.
Nobody like if it's a bad date, call it early. Don't like just continue.
Call the Uber on your client.
Exactly. So a lot of customers, like I said, come to us saying like, hey, I actually want to be able to measure success by how many people I can qualify out immediately and focus my sales team on the right people, the right accounts.
Yep. Andrea Waltz, go for the no. Go for the no so you can get the yes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead.
It works. It works. Here's some examples. Next slide. No, but I mean, it is important to take everything that we've talked about today and put it into some kind of strategy, using things like HG Insights to get those right insights, using things like LinkedIn to start those conversations. As you can just see from the quotes here, these are just some happy customers that we have. The process works if you work it.
Yep.
Beautiful.
I mean, it works. I think it's a pretty good way to end this. Of like, hey,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you have the right insights, if you really commit to a social selling strategy, it's going to work. And it's worked for lots of other people. If it wasn't working, we wouldn't have companies like Ingresso doing so well. So yeah, there you go.
And same thing with HG Insights.
There's a lot of love in this room. So we've come to the end of our broadcast. I've got your contact details on here, but I wanted to ask you both. Let's start with you, Vivek. I mean, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Like if someone wants to follow up with you on what we just talked about today.
So I'm old, so you can go old school and just send me an email. I actually do read my emails as long as they're not, automated trash. You can also certainly find me on LinkedIn. That's our company page. But if you go to my personal profile, is just linkedin.com/in/LinkedIn expert. So please feel free. Just make sure you customize the invitation and just say you listened or you heard me today on this webinar. I'm more than happy to connect. But yeah, please feel free to go old school. And then we mentioned PVC a lot, which is personalized, add value, put a call to action. We've got a whole ebook on it. If you want to go to pvcsalesmethodology.com, you can download that ebook for free, and it goes into a lot more detail into the steps that I talked about today.
Yep, same for me. Email always works. If you send an email that says hello first name,
Yeah.
I may not open that one. Although I might just to see what happened there. But LinkedIn as well is always a great way to get a hold of me.
All right. Well, I'm sad because the show is over.
No.
and
We did it in like an hour. I'm impressed with us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right on time, both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our audience for hanging in there and listening and asking the questions. I think this was a great talk on social media selling. Definitely, download the ebook that Viveka mentioned. And also, if you want to know more about, tech insights and using them to target accounts correctly, just visit us at hginsights.com. And that concludes our show. I'm signing off. Thank you, Viveka. Thank you, Justin. Bye now.
Thanks so much, David.
Thank you.
Frozen smile.
Hold on. We've got a